because, as you know, I've been going through a bit of a career change. And so then the question becomes like, how much, it's like you have to put in some effort to
Right.
making a living, not that I haven't been putting it, but the thing is like, there's this, God tells us, Jesus tells us, don't worry about what you're going to eat and what you're going to wear, because he's going to take care of that.
Yeah.
And it's really nice being able to rest in that, but that doesn't mean that you should be lazy.
Exactly.
Because there's a big, like, he doesn't say that you won't be almost naked and almost starving to death.
Yeah.
And I think about too, like, that book Unbroken about Louis Zamperini, how like God was taking care of him and gave him signs that he was taking care of him, but he almost starved. Like, he was in a terrible spot in the middle of the Pacific Ocean,
right.
And I mean, he survived. God took care of him, but it wasn't comfortable, you
Yeah.
know? So there's that, when I'm thinking about, my responsibility in sort of making a living, taking care of myself and things like that, there's a big gap between like not having food and having everything you need and then some, there's
exactly.
God has a lot of things to work with. And I think a lot of that responsibility he puts on you so that Christians don't end up just being lazy slobs that are like, God's going to feed me. I don't need to get up,
Right. Yeah. Well, and the sort of, living with that tension. When I was talking about Doctor Strange with Reed Lackey a couple of weeks ago, we kind of brought this up, that there really is a lot of mystery and things that don't really make sense to our finite understanding when it comes to the tenets of our faith, and sometimes we can be uncomfortable with that mystery and that vagueness, but it's there, and the more you try to
pin it down,
to nail it all down, I think the further away from the truth of the farther you're going to get away from the truth of what you should be living out.
Right.
Because you're going to turn it into a formula that's just going to lead to Phariseeism.
That's how you get to really bad places in Christianity. That's how you get to really bad legalism, really bad sects of certain, denominations, is trying to nail down all the mysteries and pretending like you have everything figured out.
Yep. So father figures in this movie. Before we rabbit trail this into just like an episode only about theology. So yeah, this movie goes from sort of the general idea of choosing your family down into how you're impacted by your father and what that means for who you are as a person. And I think that the choices that we see these characters having made is really interesting when you look at it, from that sort of a thematic perspective. That Peter Quill comes to the understanding that a lot of who he is as a person, apart from what he is on like a biological plane. Has come from Yondu, and he doesn't really come to that understanding until he's losing him almost.
Yes,
and there's for me, one of the funniest lines in the whole movie is "I'm Mary Poppins, y'all."
Yes,
but like and the first time through, when Peter is laughing at him, saying, "You remind me of Mary Poppins," and Yondu looks down at him and says, "Is he cool?" And Peter Quill says, "Yeah, he's cool." The first time through, I thought, "Oh, he's having a little bit of a laugh at Yondu's expense there."
Yeah.
The second time through, I kind of wondered if it isn't so much maybe that he's sort of backpedaling from trying to mock him and just sort of give him that moment of I'm cool.
Yeah. That's what I thought he was doing. I don't know what I thought like the first time. I was probably laughing too much to really think about it.
Yeah.
But definitely the second time I was like, there's no question that's what he was doing. Like he was laughing at first and he's like, is he cool? And then like just giving it to him like, yeah, you're really cool. Mary Poppins is cool. We're all cool here, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and Mary Poppins is cool. I don't know what anybody else is talking about.
And then on the other end of father figures, even worse than Ego, now we're going to talk about Thanos as a father figure. And so let's all take our antidepressants now here real quick before we move on with this part of the.
Who here thought Thanos would be a good dad?
Well, as someone who's familiar with the comics lore, I was pretty sure that Thanos wasn't going to end up being a particularly good father figure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's terrible stuff here, right?
Yeah. What he did with Gamora and Nebula, having them fight, that was just like heartbreaking. And it's like, I like it when you have a villain and then they make you feel sorry for the villain, like, and make you sort of empathize with them, like Nebula.
Yeah.
You know? Like that whole, I actually have a line written down where Nebula, her perspective on Gamora was, you were the one who wanted to win and I just wanted a sister.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's like, and it's not true. I feel like they were forced to compete with each other.
Yeah, it wasn't so much that Gamora wanted to win, she had to.
Right. They were put in this like survival situation, right? And then it's even more heartbreaking that when Nebula didn't win, she was like, you know, reconstructed. Like, oh, this body part must be the reason you didn't win. Let's make it better, and like turned her into, you know, a cyborg. I thought one of the other, it was a really interesting method of characterization for Nebula. Like, I just realized it was kind of a cool scene, but it was actually like intended as characterization as well. When she's dragged out of the rubble of the spaceship, and when she's popping all of her joints back in, and you can see how painful it is, but she does it so fast that you realize she's done this all the time.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Familiar with this pain and having to do this, and that's just like part of her. It gives depth to her character too, you know.
Yeah. One of the great Nebula moments for me, obviously she's a much more prominent part of the story in this movie than she was in the first film. But when they pick her up from the Sovereign and she wants that root, the yarrow root, and they keep telling her it's not ripe, and then she defiantly, like when she's in charge now, she picks it up and takes a big bite and spits it out. It's not ready.
It's not right. And I love how she spits it out almost in a way that it could be that she's just like showing her disdain for the Ravagers, but then she just says it wasn't right.
Right. Yeah.
There's so many great lines.
Yeah. For me, some of the gags that just landed really well that I appreciated just as much the second time around was I feel like there's a lot of comedy that is coming out over the last, I don't know, let's say the last 10 years or so, that sort of, it's the comedy of the terrible.
Okay.
Like,
expound.
Okay, like Michael Scott.
Yeah.
Is funny because he's horrible.
Yeah, and they'll say something stupid and not realize it's stupid.
Or stupid or just like horrifying. Yeah. Right? And so it's not really very, very bad, but like it's still in that same vein. of like Drax is so mean to Mantis, but it's hilarious.
Yes. Yes. And the funny thing is like he's not meaning to be mean.
Right. Yeah.
This whole like two different ways of viewing the world, and like coming from two different completely different cultures. Although I wouldn't call where Mantis came from a culture.
Yeah.
It was like her and the planet.
Right.
But like just that whole disconnect and the humor that ensues when they don't understand like the other person, you know.
Oh yeah, clashes of culture can be hilarious, absolutely. And you know, for me personally, like I really relate to like the awkward boisterousness of Drax's laughter.
Yes.
For anyone who's ever spent like much time around me, like I, you know, just sort of have no system for repressing my laughter, it seems. And when
that's one of the things that's so great about being around you, I think.
Well, I'm glad that at least one person thinks that.
At least you weren't as crazy as Brian Huster. I don't know if you've been around him when he was laughing, but like people thought it was fake.
Oh, really?
It would just be like this high-pitched, like dolphin laugh. And it was fantastic, but a lot of people, I mean, it made everyone in Chuck's look over at him, like when he started laughing.
That's funny. Just for people who don't know, we went to university together, and Chuck's was the cafeteria, and Brian was one of our friends. So anyway, but yeah. And, you know, for me, and we're going to, in the next episode here, we're going to contrast this a little bit, or I'm going to, I think, contrast this a little bit with Thor Ragnarok. But in this movie, I think the amount of comic relief was appropriate. Like, and it's more comedic than a lot of the other Marvel films, but it's still appropriately comedic. And it just provides like good comic relief that allows you to take a break from all of these really poignant and effective dramatic moments also. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of comedy in this, though. Like there's no question that it's a comedy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's an action comedy. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess. Okay, so while we're talking about funny things, the whole like Drax saying, like not saying the name of the batteries correctly.
Yeah, that was really good too. I love that.
But the best part was where he corrects him.
Right.
He's like, it's carbulary batteries.
No, it's not.
And also all of the different things that Rocket was called.
Yeah.
Because especially funny because he doesn't like being called a raccoon, even though that's the one thing he is.
Right.
And I was just losing it when he calls him a trash panda.
Yes. Yeah, that's
and
great.
He goes, "Is that worse?"
No, it's better. And then aside, it's worse. It's so much worse.
And then I can't remember who said it, but like they called him a triangle-faced monkey.
Was that one of the Sovereign or? I don't know. It doesn't matter, but it's still funny.
One of the Ravagers, or something, or maybe it was Nebula. I can't remember. But what's so hilarious is after he's called that, like the camera stays on him for a couple of seconds, and he's just like sort of feeling his face, like it's really triangle.
Yeah.
Oh, and then at the end when Mantis like, "Krabby Puppy's so cute, he makes me want to die."
Krabby Puppy.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
Oh, and then I've got this whole list of hilarious things that made me laugh.
Okay, give me one more.
Where, the one where I think Drax was like, "I always thought Yondu was your father." And Rocket goes, "One's blue."
Yeah, like, and that is a really interesting thing about the characterization and the way that they've written Drax is that, like, you know, you get these hints that his perspective on the world is just completely separate from anything that we would recognize. Yeah. And I think that's really cool because, like, you know, growing up watching, you know, Star Trek The Next Generation, where to be an alien means that you have a different kind of nose, like,